Hey guys, welcome back. Oh my gosh, it is officially February. What? Which means dun, 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 it is our Marvel theme month. We got 2 months. We're doing February and March. Super psyched. I have a list at least for February. Gonna make it for March very shortly. But our first one, I'm gonna try to do this in order as best as possible. Now, just to remind you, I have covered more of the recent videos and shows. I got to WandaVision, I got to Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Eternals, and Shang-Chi. Those are the ones that I've already covered. You can check them out on within my channel. Okay, there will be a Marvel playlist for you guys to check out. But we're going back in time. We're going to the first one in the timeline, phase one, which was Captain America, the first Avenger. Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers. I love me some Steve Rogers. Okay, first of all, the man that plays him, Chris Evans, he is a beautiful person, inside and out, but he really resembles Steve Rogers in every sense of the word. And that's kind of why he's perfect for the role. He is Captain America. I really love this film. It's it's interesting. It's fun. It brings a lot of information to what is needed for the Avengers. I don't know if you guys read the comics. I'm going to recommend, if you want to read the comics, getting Marvel Unlimited. Again, this is not an ad. I'm just letting you know I do use it. Marvel Unlimited is $10 a month. You can read as many comics as you want, but they do have per each movie. Again, I will have all of this information also on my website for the comics that correspond to the movies. So if you don't have it and you want to go to the comic book store, completely understand. I used to do that growing up. But this saves me a lot of time and money. So just letting you know. Anyway, let's get to those Easter eggs, and there is so much. Plus, we stand some Stan Lee. Like, we love some Stan Lee. Anyway, I will see you at the very end of this video. Okay, we begin Captain America the First Avenger with them finding this spaceship looking thing, but it's really Captain America frozen in space. It then goes back in time, starting in Norway, where the villain, I forget his name, is wanting to do experiments on, well, soldiers. Now, during that same time, we also see that a lot of American young men were signing up for World War II. That included Steve Rogers and his best friend Bucky Barnes. Now, Bucky Barnes was easily taken in, you know, good fighter, whatever. We'll see him later in Winter Soldier. However, Steve Rogers was very consistent and was not able to get in until the experiment. But I also want to point out is that they were watching these documentaries kind of what was happening in war, and this was very popular during the time where these types of movies would be shown to the citizens, or they'd have things about you can join the war, or this is what we're doing. In fact, Disney was very big on that. Very big. He had a whole collection of movies. There were anthropologic films, not just about the war and like propaganda of the war and how how we defeated the war eventually, but he also had things like Fun and Fancy Free and Saludos Amigos, and those were the type of films that were put out during World War II specifically. Okay, anyway, so Bucky Barnes convinces Steve Rogers to go partying with him at the World's Fair. Here we see Howard Stark, yes, of Stark Industries, the one and only Tony Stark's father, talking about the future, but I want to make note that the World's Fair did continue into the 70s, but in this time, this was 1939 to 1940. It was done, and most of those fairs were done in Flushing Meadows Corona Park in Queens, New York. And at this time, it was actually the most expensive fair that they've ever produced. Sorry, second most expensive American World's Fair at the time. So that's something to note. But that does come into play later on, especially in the next movie that we'll be doing. And then we are transported to the Hydra facility where they are talking about creating a super soldier and doing experimentation. And basically, this villain is going off on how he needs the Tesseract, and he's kind of actually going against Hitler's orders, but yeah, I mean, it was a big thing. He very much wants to be the leader beyond Hitler. And then we have Peggy Carter, who she does pop up eventually in other things as well, but we know that she and Steve fall in love. Then we're back with the bad guy, of course, and all of the imagery of what we will see play throughout any of the World War II themes. Um, Now we're back in Queens, and we're in this private facility. Howard Stark is there, doctors are there, big name people are there. They are actually going to use the secret serum on Steve Rogers. He was officially chosen for the job, and we are going to learn more about that. Now, I do want you guys to note this Hydra symbol. It does pop up um, later on in other films, as well as in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Very important to note because Hydra is a very intricate role in the MCU. So anyway, Steve Rogers at this point has gone through his super soldier serum. Wow, I cannot say that 3 times fast. Um, and he's basically being used to be propaganda, right? He's used to help uplift the motivation, and really it was mostly from the citizens and not so much from the soldiers. The soldiers are like annoyed, like, why the hell is this guy here? Why is he representing us? This is stupid. And Steve Rogers honestly feels the same. He's like, this is not what I was expecting when I went through all this. This is ridiculous. Now, believe it or not, these comic books were one of the first ones. Stan Lee was actually a teenager when he began writing these comic books in 1939, and they got very popular very fast during this time. So, of course, they're soldiers, they're citizens, and they're all reading this, trying to just get out of the mind that there is a war going on, right? They don't want to be part of it. Everyone is just done. Um, but obviously, the comic books are really important because they reflect what the MCU is all about. This MCU is all about all of those comics that Stan Lee and his team of creators, later on, eventually wrote. So, really cool that they put this in the very first film. I think Iron Man was the first film that came out, but Captain America, the first Avenger, was really the first in the chronological order, so super important. Anyway, so a group of soldiers were attacked, and Bucky Barnes was one of them. Steve Rogers ends up finding out, and this is where he gets upset, and he wants to go help the troops. He's like, I'm not sitting back anymore. I am going in them. Of course, who did it? It was Red Skull. Bucky was saved, and he did get to safety, but they figured out that there are bombs heading to places like New York, and Red Skull had the Tesseract, so of course Steve Rogers, being Steve Rogers, defeated him, and he took over the plane, I don't know what to call it, and he was like, I'm going to not only sink the plane, but also sink the Tesseract so that nobody else can use it against us. And that's exactly what he did. And that's how he ended up where he was. Everyone thought he died, but apparently he was just frozen, which is fine because, that makes the story. But as we know, the war was over at that point and everyone celebrated. And this is really what happened. Everyone really did celebrate because the war was over. The war was won by America. And that, it was just quite a big thing. So, anyway, going back to when they found him, right? So, this is 70 years later now. And they find him. Steve Rogers wakes up. He finds out that it's 70 years later. He sees that a lot of things have changed. And Nick Fury, of course, comes in and is Nick Fury. So that is where we are left off, and we are going to have to see more in Iron Man. Hello, hello, hello. How was that? That was quite interesting, wasn't it? World War II, first Avenger. Now, what I find interesting, and I'm not putting this out there until we have a full theory out there, but if you don't already know, X-Men is now owned by Disney. Now, X-Men was originally created by Fox Century. There is a link within the comics in the MCU. So, not the MCU, the MCU is the cinematic version, but there is a link in the comics written by, obviously, the Stan Lee and his people. But Wolverine was created during the same time that Captain America was. We may get to that eventually, but hopefully soon we will be seeing more connections to the X-Men, and I will cover that. But so far, there's not that many links. We may get one or two coming up in the near future. We'll see. Anyway, next up, I'm going to be covering Iron Man, so stay tuned for that.